During the Canadian Grand Prix weekend, it was almost impossible to ignore Jacques Villeneuve's comments about Daniel Ricciardo's place in Formula 1. Why is he still in F1? We are hearing the same thing now for the last 4 or 5 years. We have to make the car better for him. Sorry, it's been 5 years of that. Maybe you make the effort for Lewis Hamilton, who's won multiple championships. You don't make that effort for a driver who can't cut it. If you can't cut it, go home. There is someone else to take your place. That is how it's always been in racing. It's the pinnacle of the sport. There's no reason to keep going and to keep finding excuses. And you all talk about that first season or first 2 seasons. He was beating a Vettel that was burnt out, that was trying to invent things with the car to go win, and just making a mess of his weekends. Then he was beating for half a season Verstappen when Verstappen was 18 years old, just starting, and that was it. He stopped beating anyone after that. I think his image has kept him in Formula 1 more than his actual results. Now, these comments garnered a lot of attention from both the fans and also Daniel himself. Primarily because so far this season, Ricciardo has been one of the biggest talking points in Formula 1, and also because of the very blunt delivery by Villeneuve, which for anyone that has followed his media career will know that this is nothing out of the ordinary for him. Now, in terms of my opinion on the comments themselves, firstly, everyone is allowed to have an opinion, especially a Formula 1 world champion who also happens to be an IndyCar champion and an Indy 500 winner. I always feel this strange dilemma when I see fans criticizing actual drivers about something they said and then using their career as a justification that their opinion doesn't hold any weight. Because if that's the case, then both I and probably every single person watching this video right now isn't allowed to say anything. Having said that, when you are given an international platform by Formula 1's biggest broadcaster, I do think you also have an obligation for a bit more objectivity, and so that is why, whilst I wasn't annoyed by how he criticized Ricciardo because I think he made some valid points, the thing I had more of an issue with was how he condensed Ricciardo's career. He made it sound as if Ricciardo has only had like 2 or 3 decent years in Formula 1, and then the rest of the time that he's just been kept on due to his smile and personality. That to me felt a little bit personal and also factually wrong, because it discredits some of Ricciardo's best ever seasons, like beating a 4-time world champion at the first time of asking, beating Max Verstappen fair and square in 2017 when Max was already a very experienced driver and in his 3rd season of Formula 1, and then it also completely discounts his Renault years, which I think was Ricciardo still in his absolute prime, hence why McLaren paid so much to get him in 2021. Having said that, Villeneuve's underlying point about why Ricciardo is still at RB and where his current place is within Formula 1 were valid, especially after Tsunoda was confirmed at RB for 2025, meaning that now there is just 1 seat left at the team for next season. Ricciardo managed to have his best weekend of the season in Canada and responded to the public criticism in the best way possible, not with some funny remark in an interview, but with a genuinely good performance. He qualified 5th overall, and despite getting unlucky at the start with a 5-second jump start penalty, which he said was down to a clutch issue, he ended up finishing in 8th overall in what was a pretty tricky race for all of the drivers. And now, this was a really good result, but by no means does it justify his poor performance so far this season. It was only the first time in 9 races that he scored points in a Grand Prix compared to his teammate, who has done so 5 times already. The reason why Ricciardo's season has been so disappointing so far is twofold. The main problem is that the entire point of Red Bull, and in particular Christian Horner bringing him back, was because they felt as though given his pedigree and the prior success that they had, that Ricciardo could still make a case for getting back into the Red Bull for 2025. However, despite those expectations going into the season, the reality is that Yuki Tsunoda so far has dominated Ricciardo in the championship, and now that Red Bull have also confirmed that Checo will stay at Red Bull for at least 25 and maybe until 26, it calls into question Ricciardo's place at the team and his place in the Red Bull hierarchy. What complicates matters even more is that after Liam Lawson last year with minimal preparation impressed everyone with his handful of performances in place of Ricciardo, he has now insinuated himself into that team and proved that at the very least, regardless of how well or how badly it turns out, he at least deserves a chance to drive full-time in Formula 1. With only one seat available, Ricciardo's current form regardless of his past success, and Lawson's presence at that team every single race has started to put pressure on Ricciardo and also on Red Bull. Because if the purpose of RB is to funnel young drivers into the main Red Bull team, then if Ricciardo continues to underperform, how can you justify keeping him there in place of a younger driver? This is also where I think people have rightly made the argument that Ricciardo's image and popularity have also played a role in him not only getting the seat in the first place, but also receiving less criticism because of it, as more people want to give him the benefit of the doubt. And now, to me, this isn't just contained within Formula 1, this is just the reality of life. If someone is more popular, they'll always have more people on their side to fight their corner, even when fair criticism is deserved. In the context of Formula 1, whether people like it or not, marketability has always been a factor in racing, and to me it doesn't really become a problem until people try to outweigh marketability as a justification to keep a driver over their lack of performance. Looking ahead, I really do hope that Canada is at least a small turning point for Daniel Ricciardo, because the thing that annoys me most is that even in the last couple of years, we still see glimpses of the old Ricciardo, like in Mexico last year, the sprint in Miami, and even last weekend. However, you can't build a season off 2 or 3 good results, especially when you have a car that is capable of fighting for points almost every single weekend. In terms of Ricciardo's future, I was very interested to see what you would have to say, and so over on Twitter I asked a very open question of where do you think Ricciardo should be in 2025, with the options being stay at RB, going to another team, or leaving Formula 1 altogether. The results actually surprised me, with the vast majority of people, almost 62%, feeling that Ricciardo should leave Formula 1 at the end of this season, followed by almost 25% of people feeling that he should be kept on at RB over Lawson, and then the remaining 13.7% feeling that he is still good enough to go to another team. Given the structure at RB, I genuinely feel that right now, Ricciardo has not done enough to warrant a place at the team for next season, and if he does remain there whilst performing at his current level, then it's only going to be his commercial factors that keep him there, and not his results alone. Having said that, given the small glimpses that he has shown even this season, I think it's also important to not over-exaggerate and talk about Ricciardo as if he's driving as bad as Sargent or Magnussen are right now. His experience and calmness in the car which he has had throughout his career has meant that it's not as if he's driving into walls or having crashes every single other race. And after Canada, his points tally, at least relative to Yuki, does look a little bit more respectable. I say this because depending on how the driver market shakes out, I still think that there are teams out there that will look at Ricciardo and feel as though he can add value to their team. In particular, I think either Williams or Haas could be potential landing spots. Williams, we know, have Carlos Sainz firmly at the top of their list, but if they fail to sign him, then drivers like Bottas, Ocon and Ricciardo will surely be in the running. After Logan Sargent, pretty much anyone on the grid would be an upgrade, and alongside Albon without the pressure of Red Bull, I think Ricciardo could be another safe pair of hands and definitely help the team score more points than they are right now. Having said that, for anyone that's watched my video from a few weeks ago where I talked about where I'd like to see the drivers go in 2025, you will know that my ideal landing spot for Daniel Ricciardo was at Haas alongside Ollie Behrman. K-Mag is a driver who definitely hasn't done enough to keep his place at the team, and I think an all-new driver lineup of Behrman and Ricciardo could be a really interesting combination for 2025. With Behrman, they'd have a potential Ferrari superstar during the early part of his career in the same way that Sauber had Charles Leclerc, and I think with Ricciardo alongside him, not only would it be a very good benchmark for Behrman, but Ricciardo would also bring much needed experience, a better level of performance than K-Mag is producing right now, and also more commercial power with sponsors, which for a team like Haas is massively important. We know that the team in the past has already tried and failed to get Ricciardo when he was dropped by McLaren because at the time they couldn't afford his contract. And now under Ayu Komatsu, it seems like it's a much more methodical environment compared to under Gunther Steiner, and it would also give Ricciardo the opportunity to step into a team where he would be the team leader in the same way that he was at Renault, which I think mentally would raise his confidence having that level of responsibility on his shoulders. My biggest question about Ricciardo over the last couple of years has always been one of motivation more than anything else. What does he really want from Formula 1 right now? If he wants to chase that Red Bull seat by any means necessary, which means he has to stay at RB, then I don't really see a place for him in Formula 1 anymore with younger and more deserving drivers that should be in that seat. But if he still has the hunger to just race in Formula 1 because it's the pinnacle of motorsport, then I still maintain that there are teams that will see value in adding Ricciardo to their team. Well, there you have it. If you did enjoy this video and want to support the channel, then don't forget to subscribe, that would be massively appreciated, and I'll see you in the next one.